Good morning, Americans. This is your favorite alien here on the Tuesday, December 26, 2023, sitting in for Paul Harvey. Stand by for the rest of the story. Well, Americans, today's story is about a certain individual who, was interesting individual. And he had a fairly common name. He was born in Maryland in 1721. He died in 1784 in Maryland, too. When he was born in Maryland in 1721, that was a province or colony of Great Britain. And he had a very hum life until the 1760s, especially 1765 with the Stamp Act. Oh boy, yeah. And, he did everything he could to oppose the Stamp Act, and he got everybody together and manipulated the legislature of Maryland to really oppose it. Then when the British decided to come in with troops, you remember Boston, where they had people that quartered their troops in. You had to, in your house here, we're going to put our troops in here too. That happened in Maryland too, and he was, very much set against it. And he also didn't like the recently passed 1769 Act that said coercive activities. Oh boy, yeah, like Hamas. Yeah, okay. Well, there was a lot of coercive activities against the British government in the late 1760s, led indirectly to what you call the Boston Massacre in 1770. But in Maryland, it was pretty much a draw because the Marylanders really wanted to stay with Great Britain. And you got to understand Maryland. It's an interesting state. It's got the Ravens, the Baltimore Ravens, and, the Baltimore Orioles. Oh, boy. My grandfather was from Maryland, so I know that state pretty well. That's why it was a split state in the Civil War, because, you had people that went to the south and people that went to the north. They killed each other, too, boy. Maryland's always been a conflicting state, but it was during the American Revolution, when hostilities finally declared themselves in 1775. Well, he had no choice but to disregard his previous stance of, we gotta be with Mother England. Yeah. And he became a full-fledged patriot. But being from Maryland, he's of a little repute because some reason or another, Maryland was a second-class banana. And the reason why is it didn't sign the Articles of Confederation. Oh, no. Because they had the main attitude that, okay, I won't sign it until the other colonies, i.e. states, relinquish their claims to the Western Territory. Yeah. That was a pretty good battle they had on there. So see, North Carolina, you're not the first state that had a pain in the neck. Well, they finally did. Just before George Washington accepted the surrender of Cornwallis in 1781. But in 1780, he got elected to, or 1779, he got elected to as a delegate to the Second Continental Congress. In 1780, he got elected to the higher office of the Continental Congress. And mind you, that was the Continental Congress. So officially it was known as the CCUS. Okay? CCUS. Not the USA, but the CCUS is the anagrams that came out of that. And in late 1781, George Washington accepted the surrender at Yorktown of Cornwallis, and he got Cornwallis' sword. But at the time, the Articles of Confederation was a disaster with the 13 colonies. Maryland hadn't ratified it yet. It did in early 1781, finally, and John Hanson, according to some accounts and according to others, he was the guy behind the scenes that made the Continental Congress what it became, okay, and further enhanced the Articles of Confederation. The other states finally declined the claims to the Western Territories, and that allowed Maryland to be the 13th and final signature to the Articles of Confederation. Thus, by November 1781, everything was in place. George Washington was hightailing it from Virginia on a 1-horsepower vehicle over to the Continental Congress in Philadelphia to surrender the sword of Cornwallis. So the Continental Congress had a hard time finding a president. Oh boy, did they ever. Oh, a lot of people didn't want. One guy served a week and how do you win? Yeah. But in those days, the Articles of Confederation, it was adopted in early 1781, was functioning like Great Britain is today, where you didn't have an executive department and you didn't have a legislative department, just like Britain is today. If you notice, the Prime Minister of Great Britain is from the House of Commons, okay? So that way, if you look at the United States at that time, the President of the United States was from the House of Representatives. Oh, so you would have Mr. Johnson as President of the United States today. Okay. So, the guy in question is John Hanson. He was a respected guy in Maryland, but not so respected outside, except for the big guys. He is considered one of the founding fathers, okay, on there, although nobody talks about him. But in November 5th, 1781, he was sworn in as president of the CCUS, technically becoming the first president of the United States. In those days, it was called the Continental Congress of the United States. It wasn't the United States of America, okay? It was the Continental Congress of the United States, which the initials would be CCUS. Understand this, American. This is your country. And nobody teaches you this. But he could only serve 1-year terms. So he became the first president of the United States from November 5th, 1781 to November 4th, 1782. The other presidents before him are not recognized as presidents of the United States because the Articles of Confederation were not adopted by all 13 states, and you were still as a warring country, so you were still Hamas, technically, to the British, okay? But once he became president on November 5th, 1781, he accepted George Washington's handing over of Cornwallis's surrender sword. Therefore, the Revolutionary War was over, even though the treaty wasn't going to be signed for 2 more years until 1783. There was a lot more presidents, because each president only served a year under the CCUS Articles of Confederation, because it was the Confederation Congress of the United States, CCUS. Okay, Americans? Therefore, when you have the question, George Washington is the first president of the United States, true or false? You could say false, because the first president of the United States, not the United States of America under the Constitution. George Washington is the first constitutional president, but John Hanson is the first president of the United States as an independent country under the Articles of Confederation. So he is the president of this predecessor of the USA, which is the CCUS, not the USA. This is your favorite alien sitting in for Paul Harvey, and now you know the rest of the story. Good day.